All right. Best of 5. Top left, we have the purple Zerg for Shopify Rebellion, Lambo. And top right, as the blue Terran, we have HeRoMaRinE, Team Mouse. And Stargazers being the first battlefield. Pretty fun, actually. We do have this map slip into the TVZ map pool when there's a best of 5. Not so much when there's best of 3. I like the map, though. I think it's nice. So what I was saying is that Lambo looks pretty in shape, TVZ-wise. He did defeat Time 2-0 prior to this. I'm not going to say really, really great, because I don't think Time really had a lot to say in the game. Second game, not really. First game was pretty impressive. Time really fought hard, dug his heels in against a Zerg that was very close to just overwhelming him. Kind of doing the Zerg thing, defend, macro, and conquer. And Time delayed that conquer aspect for a good few minutes, and it was very impressive. But still, I didn't look at either one of those games and say, well, Time was playing the absolute tippity-toppest TVZ he's ever played, which can be really good when he is just playing top form, perfect conditions. And I don't think Lambo was defending and deflecting everything perfectly. There were mistakes on both sides. Could be one of those things where you grow in the space you're given. You rise up to the challenge, which, different players will have different reactions to that type of thing. Some of them very much grow with their opponent. They get better the better their opponent is. Some of them get more nervous, obviously, or less nervous, what have you. But I just don't think that Lambo is affected by a lot of those things. I think we can expect kind of a baseline performance for him of the day of. And what we saw today was pretty good. Pretty good ZvT, but not perfect. Not, oh my gosh, what did this guy do? How has he increased this much in skill? Not that insane. And Lambo, without that huge increase in skill, is coming in a little bit of the underdog. Wow, that Reaper barely got the creep tumor. A little bit of the underdog, since he has most recently lost to HeRoMaRinE twice. Now their most recent best of 3 together was when Lambo was sick. So do keep that in mind. So I would say maybe we don't even count it. But the previous one was not when he was sick, and that was still HeRoMaRinE's favor. But they do go back and forth, so it's not like a huge underdog thing. It's not like Lambo is up against the biggest challenge of his life, of his career. Rawr. But I do favor HeRoMaRinE in the finals of an Open Cup against a Zerg player that's not Raynor or Serral. Last week, HeRoMaRinE did play Raynor, and it was a very close battle that ended in a 3-2 in favor of the Zerg. But I think HeRoMaRinE is going to have a better chance against Lambo. I think maybe stylistically also, just pairs up better for the Terran. Now, HeRoMaRinE has gone up to 3 CC off of 1 gas, adding on a second barrack, so going up to a 2-1-1. Lambo is going to be able to see this with an Overlord. You already saw the 3rd CC, is now going to dip in and see the fact that it actually is 2 barracks. No weird, like, well, one was lifted, other one wasn't, scouting thing going on here. And know from that point that it is a 3-base 2-1-1. Expect the drop around 5:30 and be prepared for that drop. So, 24 lings, 7 queens in position, something like that. So overall, more than 7 queens, but yeah. Overlord will die. Sacrificed. It was pretty worth, and Lambo's already compensating for the kill. As Lambo grabs a 3rd hatchery, saturates it. You can only expect him to delay this in-base hatchery for a while. Just making sure to cover it with Overlords. Going into a lair, getting the faster Overseer, and I was going to say centrifugal hooks, but I was waiting on the Baneling Nest to actually come down. Yeah, and the faster centrifugal hooks. So not the fastest of upgrades, right? HeRoMaRinE's going to have faster ones. And the first drop is not going to be, it's not going to be a big deal, so it's also not a big deal that speed on the Banelings won't be done. You don't actually need Banelings for the first drop. So I think they both understand each other. You know, HeRoMaRinE, no doubt expecting a Baneling performance from Lambo. Maybe you give a little thought to mutas on this map, since we've seen it more than a few times at this point. On this map specifically, in this matchup. But otherwise, if you're kind of guessing, I think you'd still just go ahead and guess Lings, Banelings, double upgraded. +1 melee, or +1 melee, +1 carapace. And then maybe you do want to stick on that for a while. Worry primarily about the Massling Bane. And then worry about whether it's Hydras or not, I guess, later on. Because I actually don't know. Lambo did Hydras and Lurkers in his 2 games against Time. Might have changed against HeRoMaRinE. Might have changed it because of the map. Does not change it, actually, as a Hydralisk 10 does go down, even before the upgrade starts. So those are really quite late upgrades. HeRoMaRinE's 1-1 is already halfway done. First drop was taken care of. Totally fine. Lambo had his queens in position, just barely. They do still need to be protected by a handful of Lings, and those did eventually come around, so... No fireworks yet, guys. No fireworks. But if there were fireworks, it'd be because someone messed up a lot. And I didn't expect either one of them to mess up this portion of the game. And this is why this opener can be particularly brutal and just a good idea on this map. It leads to that map presence that a Zerg player can only do so much to stop. You know, they can't really get offensive against you. With the 3-base setup having a wall for Terran, there's no run-by attempts. So you kind of, as a Zerg player, you can't really stop this from happening. But you can try and predict it and mitigate. So, oh my gosh, HeRoMaRinE actually quite late to picking up right there. You can predict it and mitigate it and deal with it eventually. Because this isn't, I have yet to see this actually end a game in the Terran's favor. I think it just is a part of the TVZ that a Zerg player has, you know, been forced to figure out how to play. And the question is, do they play it really well and take care of things no problem? Or do they take care of it, yeah. And it is a big problem. And I'm gonna say that one was kind of like a, yeah. You know, HeRoMaRinE missed the pickup on the Marines, so I think it could have been better for him, but Lambo did have to put a lot of effort into deflecting that, so 5 queens died, lots of banelings were used. Yeah, you know, it's not the end for anyone, right? Another drop's going to be denied by the presence of Ling Baneling, but the tank sieging up will take care of that. HeRoMaRinE's not going to give up hammering this position. Here's the thing, though. All right, this might seem like a perfect idea. Like, why wouldn't you consider hammering this position? It's a base they can't take. It's a base that's not particularly good to attack into because you're working against your own choke. The downside to this is that, again, one, I remember seeing it win the game, so I'm just, like, not a believer in it, but it's far away from anything important. So it's not like you're hammering away on technology or the hatcheries. 2, you have nothing else on the map as the Terran player. So maybe a run-by with Banelings catches you off guard. Does not here. Kudos to HeRoMaRinE for taking this into account. A little bit nasty of a hold, but eventually it is a hold. But also the lack of creep spread, right? So Lambo, you know, he gets his macro hatchery, he gets his 4th base up, he could go for a gold at this point, he gets a lot of creep spread on the map. You are just not taking care of everything. So if there's like 3 things a Terran has to do, clear up creep, drop important structures, deny bases, let's go with those 3 things. You're really only focusing on one of those things. So the other 2 can kind of spiral out of control if the game doesn't go swimmingly. HeRoMaRinE now less focused on just trying to drop the main base over and over again. Has a little bit more of kind of a regular push through the top side and a bit of a drop to the bottom side. You do not want to let the Zerg player just snowball because you're hyper-focused on this idea where the execution isn't really delivering. I'd still say, though, that HeRoMaRinE with the 20 armor supply lead has clearly thrown Lambo off his game. Lambo maybe not as quick to getting into lurkers and a hive as he could be, should be, so the supplies are a bit concerning. The lack of actual lurkers on the map are a bit concerning as HeRoMaRinE continues to move in, changing the format of the battle from, okay, I'm going to drop your main, drop your main, drop your main, to more of a typical TVZ push. I think is working out well for HeRoMaRinE as he clears up a lot of creep, denies effectively 2 bases with this anyways, right? You deny this base and this base. Not that Lambo is eager to take either one, just to be clear. But you do deny it. And the creep, not cleared up, but just in the top side, but also the bottom side. So less alerts for Lambo as the game continues on and HeRoMaRinE continues to max out. I love this, though, from Lambo as he tries to hold on with the current set of units. Unupgraded Hydras, they don't have speed, but they're a decent number indeed. He's also trying to get to those lurkers, and most importantly, trying to get to that Nidus Worm. This could change things around in a very big way. We know that. And I don't think he has to wait for lurkers to make it change things. He just throws 40 lings in there, and the Nidus Worm actually pops up. That's still a thing that HeRoMaRinE has to take care of. Focus a lot more of his attention and reinforcements to a Nidus Worm, right? So I would like it. I would like it indeed. But if you can fit the lurkers in there and still live, then by all means, fit the lurkers in there. HeRoMaRinE's going to change tactics, or positioning at the very least, and now do a big push to the south side, of which creep spread was never replaced. And this is one of those things I noticed when Lambo was facing time. So, you know, there is some imperfect defense against time that didn't end up mattering because other things happened in the game. But pretty critical lack of creep spread as things got going, and totally understandable, by the way. Very much Lambo has been under a ton of pressure. That's the reason he doesn't have a lot of queens for a lot of creep. I keep on like forgetting the word creep. Anyways, but it is nonetheless a problem for him. The lurkers did manage to get situated in the hanging natural of HeRoMaRinE. 17 SCVs died, and the command center has to lift, so a couple less mules, a couple less scans. But overall, did not change the trajectory of this game. HeRoMaRinE still in a dominating position, is technically still on 4 bases, with a 5th now mining, about to turn into a planetary, and 3-3 about halfway done, as Lambo is only just now really getting to lurkers. He has completed their upgrades. He is working on +3 Carapace at the very least, and he is adding on a Viper, but it's more of a hobbling to the late game than it is racing towards the late game. And HeRoMaRinE is already prepared with those ghosts, so really flipping the script compared to the last TVZ that we were able to see, where I kept on talking about Lambo being on the faster pace, having that better early and mid-game, and getting to this position in a really good fashion. This is the opposite. HeRoMaRinE is the one that's having a pretty good mid-game, macroing very well and getting to a late game composition. Doesn't mean the game is decidingly one way or the other, but it does mean I think that HeRoMaRinE has more potential. Lambo's lack of creep spread again is this huge sore point. The injects are maybe a little less important as he now is putting so many resources into larva-liked units like Hydras and Lurkers and Vipers, but yeah, the lack of queens has hurt him. It's terrifying, and as much as we feel creep is overpowered when it takes over literally the entire map, it is very much a necessity for the Zerg. Very much so. Oh, that was a massacre. Lurkers not defended. Can't defend themselves as a team against ghost snipes, so just the ghost snipes happened all super simple, super easy. Get the kills, even the Viper going down there as HeRoMaRinE also is able to save all of the ghosts. And Lambo, as I said, is kind of hobbling along. Really needs to save this base, but with the lack of creep spread and just a super easy position and reinforcement line that Terran has on this map, on this base, it seems like it's almost inevitable this will be a goner. Lambo's got to get one heck of an engagement. I would say right now, okay, as a Wood of Mine splashes back on the Ghost more than the Zerg, there is a problem with HeRoMaRinE's composition, which can happen. We talk about this often enough. He's kind of gone too much on the ghost aspect. Can you really have too many ghosts? Yes, you can. In that particular battle, it was basically all ghosts. Oops, all ghosts. So HeRoMaRinE needs to take a bit of a chill pill, probably add in more of the units that cover the ghosts, the Marines, Widow Mines, Marauders, whatever. Which means that Lambo is going to get his own time to recover, so we'll see what he can do with that. And he is finally getting to that top right base. Because if he only had this base and he's constantly being hammered, it falls down, we're talking about a severe lack of minerals to mine from his first 3 bases, right? That would be the really sore point here. And as Stargazers continues on. 15-minute game so far. Let's say it gets up to 20 or 25 minutes, then obviously just the simple lack of bases on this map will become usually more of a problem for the Zerg player, as they use more resources in all these trades. Currently a decent trade, I suppose, for TDZ. But Lambo has leveled the playing field here. The perhaps too eager engagement after engagement after engagement from HeRoMaRinE did backfire. A pretty important moment, too. If Lambo had just stubbornly continued building lurkers and investing all of his resources into that, I think the Ghost battle would have been game over, but he did go back into Ling Bane, Ling Hydra, which I think is working way better. Way better. And it's just what we've really been seeing as well from more late game TVZ. I still think that lurkers, as I was pointing out in the last series, they have their moment. If the Terran player is really gung-ho on the mid game, the lurker suddenly appearing and going for an attack themselves is terrifying to a person who doesn't have ghosts. But I think once you have either kind of lost the pacing battle as a Zerg player, like they got the ghost, you didn't get to lurkers, or you did the lurker be ghost thing and the ghosts are winning, I think you go back and Ling Bane, Ling Hydra. It seems to be the play here, and Lambo, I think, knows that as well, so we see him not even bothering with any more lurkers. Maybe a couple to put in Ice Worms, but only after this battle is done with, and right, this battle is going super well for Lambo. HeRoMaRinE could not stick the landing, basically. He had the momentum, he had a good position, he had suppressed Lambo to a certain number of bases, with only a couple of active creep tumors, but Lambo has fought back hard by basically adjusting his composition at the moment he needed it most. The moment that he needed to protect his hatchery, he needed to put the resources, whatever few he had, into the right composition. And he did. And as I said, a Nidus Worm maybe could use a couple of lurkers. That would still be kind of scary if it's just pure crackling, spilling forth. That's also pretty good. Although we do not have the crack upgrade yet. Adrenal glands never started. So, yes, late game ZvT. Now that things have calmed down and basically gotten to an even point, Lambo pretty low on a bank for a Zerg player is a bit concerning, but well, okay, maybe we haven't stopped yet. Big engagement happening. Once again, HeRoMaRinE caught awkwardly, kind of transporting units? Like, you just didn't think the Zerg army would be offensive like that. So his units were clearly meant to go to the south, I think? They kind of split in a very weird way. What I was going to bring up as I was identifying, you know, like, hey, we're in late game ZvT, guys, is the conundrum that Terran players seem to be finding themselves in this day and age. Now, I know we recently had a few TVZs where Clem played some really fabulous late game. Haven't gotten to hyper-analyze those. I just watched them as a fan, a viewer, wasn't really intimate with it. But taking that aside for a second, there does seem to be, because we're watching HeRoMaRinE die, by the way, so I'm also just kind of giving up trying to hype the game. The dilemma seems to be, how do you tackle a late game Zerg player who does just go, frankly, pure Ling, Bane, Hydra, Viper, Infestor? Like, okay, the spellcasters are whatever, but the point is, like, they're not going to lurkers, not going to ultras, not brute lords. This is it. And it seems to really be throwing Terran players for a loop. Not that we also haven't seen Supreme late game mass brute lord throw HeRoMaRinE for a loop. He was bit stumped as to what to do against that versus Raynor, right? But this has also, it feels like, been stumping a couple of Terran players. Maru couldn't do it against Serral. Clem couldn't do it against Serral initially, but then something changed upon their rematch. And now we see HeRoMaRinE also falling to it. But in this case, I mean, this wasn't even actually that good of an example of a Terran player kind of looking like, you know, what can I do? I don't understand. HeRoMaRinE was caught off guard about 3 or 4 times in this game. His army was probably good enough 3 out of 4 of those times to have a real battle ensue, but it was always caught, you know, unburrowed, unsieged, unprepared, and that's pretty easy to call as the reason HeRoMaRinE is dead in this game. But even if it hadn't, once Lambo held the line. HeRoMaRinE was very quickly losing control of the game. Very quickly. And that's it, guys. I think that's pretty much it. HeRoMaRinE's gonna try and turtle to get one more base up and running, but now that Lambo is in such dominant position, it's no longer a Lambo worrying about the amount of resources he can or cannot mine. It's HeRoMaRinE. He's gonna be mining off 1.5 bases, maybe. This base gets denied, just an orbital anyways. HeRoMaRinE's also about to be surrounded. Army supplies are quite similar, but with the fungals, blinding clouds, banelings popping off. Didn't really look, I guess, too bad for HeRoMaRinE, but of course, Lambo is going to be remaxing faster, so still not good enough. I tried my best. I don't care. It's not good enough. Slap. HeRoMaRinE's gonna get a big adrenaline rush of minerals with the mules, but you know, it's not even that impressive of a mule drop. 1, 2, 3, 4 orbitals? 5? And he's been scanning and muling as much as possible. Still isn't that much. Probably a pretty crappy feeling for HeRoMaRinE, who really did have a window? A window? Get it? He had a window for winning? Okay, anyways. He probably did. But while the ghosts were amazing, when they just found 5 or 6 lurkers, no repercussions, that is when I'm pretty sure HeRoMaRinE was winning the game. Yeah. But then just the pure Ling Baneling kind of caught him off guard, and he was forced to totally disengage to rebuild a composition. And that was the breathing room Lambo needed. Thank you, Lurkers89, for the 3 months. Popping by to sub quickly. Keep the great work with Cast and the podcast. Thank you. In the bottom left now of Tropical Sacrifice, we have Lambo. In the top right, sending out an SCV, it is HeRoMaRinE. Little proxy. Little cheeky. HeRoMaRinE is going to send out a second SCV as well, so it is officially that standard 2 Rex. Usually I would just default assuming it was a 2 Rex right from the get-go, but I feel like Terran players are really trying to experiment against Zerg nowadays. So, I said a 2 Rex, then a third SCV came along for the ride. It is going to be a 3 Rex. Very dedicated indeed. And you know what else? It's going to be successfully hidden, I believe. Close, but no cigar. Sorry, man. Lambo, so close to scouting at least the 2 Rex. It still would have been incomplete information because he would not have dived beyond it for the sake of saving his overlord. And he probably wouldn't have seen the 3rd Rex, but he at least would have known to be prepared for aggression. And now he has no idea. He did not go for a pool first in this game either. But maybe he can still hold? I am not full of confidence. 3 drones were transferred over to the low ground, which sometimes starts, you know, means they can beat the crap out of an SCV, but with 1 Marine, now 2 Marines, now 3 Marines already there. There's no beating the crap out of any workers today. You just kind of have to give up, honestly, and that's exactly what Lambo has done. He's given up on the hatchery, not in the game. He's going to go into Roach Warren, try and bust out, do a little bit of counterattack. So job accomplished. Very concerning, though, now for HeRoMaRinE, is that, you know, what is my opponent doing? If he's going to go into roaches, I need to start getting prepped for that ASAP. But once he figures out that is roaches, I mean, there's a couple things you can do to buy time. You know, you really don't get that fast of a factory when you 3 racks, so the counterattack is a little concerning, but then you have so many Marines that it's like, you kind of have to mess up on the read, I think, as a Terran player to let this game go. So, I don't know, by misreading, I mean trying to run up the ramp with all your Marines, and then the Ravagers just micro against them, right? Like that type of messing up. You can build bunkers, you can run away, because the Roach Ravager can't chase very effectively, not like Speedlings would have been able to, right? So you can run away into another bunker on the natural, that even if it doesn't hold the line, continues to buy time. You know, all the cards are here for HeRoMaRinE. I'm trying to think of a really good card game where you want to collect all the cards. I can't think of any right now. Just thinking of all the games where you want to get rid of the cards. So, Lambo is clearly at a disadvantage. I mean, this guy lost his hatchery, spending a lot of money into an army that shouldn't be that effective. Cyclone is not quite halfway done. So, the natural is going to be broken. HeRoMaRinE was not so foolish as to put a command center on the natural, though. Because if he had done that, well, that's on you, man. And that was a Cyclone, he should be fine. A little bit of a pull on the SCVs, taking things very seriously. Since I think he was able to see that there's really not just 3 or 4 Ravagers, we're now up to 6 Ravagers. So the dedication from the Zerg player can absolutely change how this game plays out. Because if a Terran player thinks, okay, I don't think this guy's going to dedicate, I think he's going to basically scare me, and they gamble on that, well, maybe you die. Just got a coughing fit. Sorry, guys. 2 Cyclones, a Medevac, and a handful of Marines gonna put the micro potential sky high for HeRoMaRinE, and Lambo is gonna have to retreat from that. But Lambo, I mean, got what he could from this, and if he would save all of his Ravagers, I'd be actually quite excited for his potential. But it looks like he's not going to be able to save all of his Ravagers, maybe 3 of them. Cyclones are very injured, so could go back with them and repair, could try and just continue aggressing, and he's going to just be aggressive. Be aggressive. With speed done, though. Oh, and he even got tagged by a corrosive bile. I was gonna say, with speed done, I don't think there's much potential here. Yeah. If Lambo just entirely skipped speed, I think HeRoMaRinE could play around with the Cyclones, but nope. And then he mismicroed them anyways. And now the game continues on. Lambo has recovered up to 3 bases. 56 workers. Okay. Looks to be just deciding to go into roaches, which is fine. Might be a little surprise for HeRoMaRinE, though. And then you definitely can choose to go either direction here as the Zerg. Continue investing into roaches or go into Ling Baneling. I'm actually not sure I'm gonna like this push from HeRoMaRinE. I don't know. Well, you know, there's not a lot of creep spread. He could probably abuse his position really well. Scans and sees roach reinforcements, so now if he was curious about which composition he's up against, he knows. And he also knows just how much of that composition he's up against, which really isn't that much. That is not a lot of Roach Ravager. Certainly don't have their upgrades. 3 tanks now in position. Marines with combat shields, providing a decent buffer. And the last second concave here from Lambo. Just barely not going to be enough. Barely not going to be enough. The tank's just so freaking effective. Lambo was, I want to say, like 8 roaches away from defending. I know he's still going to defend. He's still going to defend. Those tanks, very lonely now with that Marine buffer. HeRoMaRinE just doesn't have enough reinforcements, or maybe he does. Good lord, down to literally 5 Marines to protect that 1 remaining tank. Ay, ay, ay. Okay, HeRoMaRinE is going to go ahead and pick up and leave. Maybe not, maybe not? Maybe not. No, not actually. 2 tank shots, no, just the 1 from the sieged up tank, but 1 unsieged tank to surprise amount of DPS. That's what HeRoMaRinE is hoping to go for. I think if you got a second shot with the siege tank, if it was sieged faster, a little more wiggle room. But, you know, at the end of the day, I'm talking about wiggle room to, like, stick around on the mid part of the map. It's not even that he would actually be hitting the hatchery again. Yeah, okay, HeRoMaRinE with that 2-base attack is not going to win this game. Very close to it, though. Very close. Lambo was... He's supply blocked a hot second. He is larva locked out for 2 seconds. His queens aren't pulled to the front to tank a couple of shots. Anything along those lines, and he might have died. And also, while it was happening, a couple Lings got in and killed a handful of SCVs, actually. 14 SCVs in total have died in this game, so... HeRoMaRinE is going to try and play this out with a 3rd CC. Recently started. The Lambo, now the world is his oyster. 54 drones is really not all that impressive, and he still has to balance a good number of units for attacking and defending with a good number of drones, but I think he's close to being able to do that balancing act. A little bit of creep spread's going to help him with it, of course. And that's currently what's really missing. Lambo's going to add on those Banelings and really diversify. Which is quite important. You know, not that pure Roach Ravager couldn't be good enough, but I do think Roach Ravager with Ling Baneling actually just requires so much more attention from the Terran, in my opinion. Like, it really changes how they're able to engage with the army. In this case, Lambo, he actually went chasing a couple Liberators with, I think, some very important Ravagers. I mean, they're kind of equally important on either side, I suppose. They're needed for the Liberators, they're needed for the attack. The hatchery does go down. You know, with 4 more Ravagers, there's a lot more Corrosive Biles that he can throw down to try and buy time, or even dive and try and kill a tank in exchange for 1 or 2 Ravagers, right? But then double Liberator would have sieged up somewhere, and I can definitely see the dilemma that was going through Lambo's brain. At the end of the day, HeRoMaRinE gets the 3rd hatchery and says, you know what, that's going to be good enough. And I think that's the correct call. You're getting into that type of position, you're probably even wondering, like, wait, is that really all of it? Is that really all he has? And sometimes it is, so you're rewarded with a win. And sometimes it's not, and Zerg players were, you know, building 40 Lings and eggs that just popped, so... Well, this game continues to develop. 4th base was finished, so the 3rd drones are able to mine pretty much consistently. Not too big of an interruption, but drop once again in the main base, being a real headache. Lambo is about to have a 2 upgrade lead over his opponent, so that is something to think about. But hasn't really been able to situate himself positively in this game. Always a little bit late to the front lines. Not able to buy as much time with those corrosive biles as you would hope, having built up a good number of Ravagers. So the army is already on the doorstep. It's actually past the doorstep. It doesn't even knock on the door. It's currently rifling through the candy jar. And you got nothing to defend it. That's a lot of Marauders, a lot of tanks. I think HeRoMaRinE has brought this game back. Now, as long as he can get corrosive biled anyways. That was close. Should be able to rip and tear through these Ravagers. Despite having that upgrade lead, the Ravagers are just the soft underbelly of the Zerg composition. Meant to buy time, do damage, all while being properly protected. And in this case, they weren't. Lambo had to go running around his own base is a little bit too much. A little bit too much. First Liberators, then the drop, all meant that he was always out of position to buy that time, to slap down those corrosive biles, the line in the sand. That hopefully would mean he gets another round of production before he really has to engage. And if we're talking about 10 more roaches, maybe like 12 banelings even, protecting what ended up being, 10 Ravagers, right? That might have been a hold, but now it's too far gone. The snowball is solidly in favor of HeRoMaRinE, and he pushes to victory. GG. Pretty cool game overall. Lambo did a solid job bringing it back. HeRoMaRinE did a solid job of bringing it back. Now I move on to Moondance for game 3, all tied up now. Bottom right is Lambo. Top left it is HeRoMaRinE. Coming at Lambo like a rabid child on Halloween. Busted through the doors, went straight for the candy. This year, my mother wanted to be the house that gave out full-size candy bars. Perhaps her goodbye to the neighborhood since we're moving. So we went to Costco, which is an amazing place. Costco is fantastic. Anyone who doesn't have a Costco near them, I feel bad for you. Poor Europeans. I think Costco exists in every continent now, but like in America, there's a Costco. Not everywhere. You do have to drive a decent bit for it most of the time, but still, like within driving distance. I don't think it's the same for any other country. It's amazing, right? They have super cheap food that's pretty good because why not give you super cheap food since you're spending so much money on anything else? All their products are very top quality. All their Kirkland signature products are actually really good. And they're a pretty ethical company. CEO keeps his pay at a relatively low amounts. Pays well to all the workers. So it's like one of those rare things where you walk into it and you're just like, this is America. Fucking America, right? Just a huge store with so many people. It's so busy. It's so packed. Comically large boxes of things. But without the seedy underbelly of a seedy corporation and terrible worker compensation and stuff like that. So you can feel good about it too. It's fantastic. So we went there and picked up a bunch of full-size candy bars. We have a 3 racks on the way, guys. Very interesting. HeRoMaRinE does certainly love to play around in these open cups, even at the finals of it. He still gets the finals. He often still wins the finals, so more power to him. But, you know, I don't think you would see this... Well... He plays around in more games in the Open Cup. Thing is, I think he would, like, he is practicing something for a purpose, not just to be like, lol. But I think this type of weird opener, him 2-raxing or 3-raxing as a cheese, him doing a 3-rax opener as a 2-base build, him throwing in, like, battle cruisers or 2-base all-ins, like, it just... Pick one or two of those things, and that's what he might show in a prestigious best of 5 or best of 7 on a DreamHack. But you don't get the same type of, like, almost every game is a bit unique that you do from HeRoMaRinE in the Open Cup. So last game was very much a cheese, ended up working technically, he won the game. Now we have, well, kind of a cheese as well, but we usually, when we say cheese, we almost always mean that it's very early on in the game, because no one has really accepted a universal definition of cheese. For me, it's something that happens early in the game that needs to be unscouted to be very effective. This is not very early on in the game, but I do still think that it has to be unscouted to be effective. Now, at one point, this didn't have to be unscouted. We had that time period where Cure and a few other Terrans were doing 3 or 4 racks 2-base into 3-base builds. And it was a real conundrum for the Zergs because they basically had to read this very difficult to read game. Where at any point, the Terran player could pull the trigger and attack into you. But they also don't have to. So the Zergs would be like, drone, army, drone, and they'd freak out and they'd die. Nowadays, I think if Lambo were to know this was on the way, and he does now, but if he knew prior, he wouldn't freak out as much. Right now, this is just a surprise factor. I don't think he realized it was gonna be a 3-rax. So he is not as prepared as he should be. He's also looking for a surround by looks of things, which kind of didn't work out. But it looks like it's going to be enough damage anyways from the Queens and Lings. Sorry, the Marines are not doing enough damage. 3 drones fall, and that's not enough. 5 Marines looking for the gold here. And they don't get it. They come up very, very short. Only 4 drones lost for that. And even though it was only Marines, and those are very quick to replace, that's still... It's a huge gap of time where Lambo doesn't have to be concerned. And that is the problem. Once you take care of that first ball of Marines, as quick as that, you know, if they're dancing around the edge of creep, and again, you're having that conundrum, yes, no, and then there's another ball of Marines built up behind it, okay, that would be concerning. But that was instant. Your Marine pulled the trigger, Lambo deflected it within 10 seconds, and now gets a drone. Just need to keep tabs on when exactly the follow-up will happen. Because, you know, eventually they're going to start dropping you again. So that's what this Ling's trying to do. It's going to miss it. No, he's going to find it. Perfectly placed Ling. Well done, Ling. And while you might lose track of exactly where the medevacs are headed, the point is now you know at the point in which you have to build army. Not even that much, though. It is still only 2 medevacs. So Queens, Lings, in a decent number will take care of it. Just need to be in the right position. So again, this could be... Even back to droning at this point, I think. He's going to have 37 Lings. Yeah, back into droning. 100%. There you have it. Well, the drop is trying to be as annoying as possible. Gotta be very careful when you start trying to run around like this. You think you're just... Oh, well, maybe he doesn't have to be careful, actually. I was gonna say, you start thinking that the medevacs will never die. I'll just run away from the Queens, and then the Lings collect a surround, and then you try to escape, and these professional Zergs are usually very good about making sure their Queens are in the proper escape path, so this couldn't happen. But HeRoMaRinE stuck his ground at the gas geyser, which meant the Lings couldn't get the surround that would have forced the evacuation, so Lambo had to move his Queens, thus putting them out of position to stop this once and for all. And that is how a snowball starts, isn't it? That's, so very much unlike the first engagement that was over and done with within a good 10 seconds, if that. This has lasted 20 seconds plus, because of course it's still alive. Now it pairs up with the main push. Lambo spent all of his resources and attention defending it, and only recently finished rebuilding that spawning pool. So, no way he could have been prepared to even try to stall this out. And with tanks and liberators and all the army already sieged up on the hatchery, it seems like this might just be a very, very screwed Lambo. GG. HeRoMaRinE takes game 3. I'm gonna blame the 2 medevac drop for that one. 100%. Killing the spawning pool, lasting as long as it did, it wasn't supposed to do any of those things. It's supposed to be a simple, done deal. 2 medevacs? Pff, I can handle that. No. Feels bad for these Zerg fans out there. Pretty painful he lost the spawning pool. It's pretty painful. There are times when a spawning pool being lost like aren't the biggest of deals. You know, if a Zerg player is maxed out, even if they take some poor engagements, you know, you can still make banelings from the lings you still have. But at that early on in the game, I mean, obviously Lambo was supposed to be making more lings the entire time. Reverse that. There we go. Here we go. Top right, down a game now. He is Lambo. Bottom left, we have HeRoMaRinE. Oh yeah, opened up with a very unorthodox build. I don't think as a opener it was particularly effective, but I think the double drop beyond it was super effective. Almost a one-shot kill thing, you know? You're playing Pokemon, you didn't memorize what counters what, you're just kind of guessing and praying. Your Pikachu Thunder Shock didn't do shit. Pikachu gets knocked out and you're like, oh god. I don't know. Here's a Venusaur. It Razor Leafs and just like one-shots your opponent. And you're like, oh. Cool. I didn't know that. Because really, again, the double drop follow-up was not supposed to be as deadly as it was. It was 100% a surprise. As a spectator. That it was going to do that much damage. And you're probably surprising the Lambo too, who I think once the spawning pool was sniped, and his Marine and the Marines tucked himself into a corner, knew he was screwed, but just it surprised Pikachu face. I, by the way, am 100% the person that did not memorize what counters what in Pokemon. Like, I know the basics, but I totally get lost when it comes to, like, fighting versus Ghost versus Steel versus whatever. So I'm just guessing. I just throw shit out. So a 1-Rex expand so far. See if HeRoMaRinE has any other tricky builds up his sleeve. Looks to be a 3rd CC. No second gas being planted. So not tricky yet. I mean, 3 CCs can still go into something a little bit weird. Lambo. He's got an Overlord. This time around parked into the back. So previously we saw him do this. It was parked here. Does look like he's keeping in mind to make sure his patterns change. Or perhaps he's had more success against HeRoMaRinE when doing this pattern. Or... Actually, HeRoMaRinE did get a second gas, by the way. That, I'm pretty sure was a bit later. It was 23 factory and then... Oh, maybe it wasn't. I'm crazy, sorry. Anywho, the Overlord, when he was facing Time, was very ineffective. Although it didn't matter. He still defeated Time. Maybe now thinking it'll be better placed over here for any tricks, because HeRoMaRinE has been playing some tricky builds. So if he maybe was expecting HeRoMaRinE to play very boring 3rd CC, he would have planted it here. But now he's intent on figuring out what the hell this guy is doing. And he's gonna be able to see that it is a 1/1/1. Looks like maybe just going to Banshees. Once the creep tumor, not gonna get the creep tumor. Sorry, buddy. All right, all right, all right. It's a good old-fashioned Hellion Banshee opener. Pretty sure the Overlord scouts it. I mean, it's definitely gonna die for it, but pretty sure it gets a scout. Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure, for sure. It could technically be a fake, but it's not, so. Here's the thing. Even if it was a fake, what would it be a fake for? A Raven is not that big of a deal. Raven would maybe change up how you place certain units on the creep, maybe? But if there's a potential for a fake, but the whatever they could be faking isn't that big of a deal, then you don't even have to worry about it, right? Now, if it was a fake for a battle cruiser, well, that would have been pretty scary. So that could be running through Lambo's mind. He really didn't get the whole picture, technically. The Overlord died scouting a tech lab. If there's a fusion core here and a refinery being built here, you just wouldn't know about it, right? But it is rather simple. It is pretty simple. It's a Banshee. Italians. You do need some detection. But a Spore Crawler is about to finish. Well, he's about halfway done, so, I mean, there's still an awkward part where the Spore doesn't cover the entire hatchery here, and the Creep is also not covered by the Spore. So pretty worthwhile scan, I guess. That's a lot of Hellions, I gotta say. 10 Hellions, you kind of look at them and you're like, oh, it's Hellion. You know, like, whatever, man. But then they just continually get full shots on the Queens, and you're like, oh, that is doing damage. So I think that's kind of what happened there. Well, okay, so two things happened, right? One, the amount of Hellions, right? There's a lot. They were actually all getting, very frequently, full volleys off on a Queen. He was even making sure to focus fire one Queen at a time. 2, the Banshee. It just literally hovered away from detection range, so it was adding in its damage. Maybe not consistently, but often enough. So the Queens were taking damage from 2 different sources very early on in the game, so there wasn't a lot of transfuse energy. And that eventually, if you can't get a full surround or actually get detection to finally get rid of that pesky Banshee, you're gonna lose the Queens. They aren't immortal. Although sometimes they feel like it. So 6 Queens have gone down. About to be a 7th. 10 Hellions and a Banshee have fallen as well, so do keep that in mind. The actual loss of these units might not be a particularly big deal, as 7 drones also go down. 1 more Banshee, 1 more Banshee, 1 more Banshee. No, okay, no transfuse comes in. Right, the actual loss of the Hellions might not be a particularly big deal if there's no run-by counterattack in mind here. Because that would be, first and foremost, the scariest thing. If you don't have enough Marines and you lose all your Hellions, you can't place down your 3rd CC, that's trouble. But the second thing is that do keep in mind 14 Hellions. So 6 more than usual, maybe 8 more than usual, actually. That's a lot of time not spent producing more mid-game units, right? So you definitely want some value from 14 Hellions, which I would say you got. I would say you got it, for sure. It just is a severe delay on your reactors and your barracks. But I think he got what he was looking for, and Lambo is the one that's been pushed a little bit back on his heels, kind of having to recover, right? Get his stance back under him. And so far, doing a good job of that. 80 drones is exactly where he wants to be. Now trying to produce up to Ling Baneling. At least made sure to get some difficult hooks. I'm forgetting about that. Biggest takeaway from the losses here, of course, 1, he is not at an army as fast as he maybe could have been had he deflected it super easily. Again, creep spread. Creep spread is not very good at all. That's gonna happen when you lose all your Queens. It's not much that Lambo could have done to change that. So, Not a lot of creep to work with. Not an army prepared to go. Now gonna have to make the best out of kind of a last-second defense. But this really pesky position in the top side of Data C continues to aggravate Zergs till the end of time. As one tank does go down, the other one was so well placed. Got a good shot in the Banelings on Lambo. He got that nice surround, is still under attack. Still losing even more queens. Oh, God. And it looks like this will finally be taken care of as the tank on siege is attempted to be saved. It will be saved. That's a good decision there from HeRoMaRinE. Good decision. Good attack. HeRoMaRinE now ahead a little bit in the army supply. Looks like he's going for an 8 racks. Yes, indeed, that is a lot of barracks, so this is not going to stop anytime soon. There's going to be very much no time to breathe for Lambo, so the fact that he, again, was already pushed a little, the fact that he's barely getting his feet under him again is a bad sign when momentum is such a big deal against this style of play for Terran. If HeRoMaRinE was adding on a 4th CC and just doing a couple of drops left and right, Lambo might still have trouble against it, but I'd have a faith that he'd hold. Now the only way he holds against HeRoMaRinE, who's really dedicating to an 8 racks effectively all in, is if the Marines run into the Banelings. Which, you know, they're not supposed to do. So I don't think they will. And now Lambo has 0 Banelings even to account for. Only 2 Lings. 34 Lings about to pop, but as his Queens and Hydras are being taken down by the Marines underneath the power of the Medivacs, that is GG. HeRoMaRinE will take the 3-1 victory. And I think this is his 50th Open Cup win. I think.